afternoon, fellow citizens. Welcome back again to the Citizens Chat Show. My name is Masesa Demiano. And of course, we are just a few weeks ago, we celebrated our 59th independence as a country. And it's from then we're still having these conversations around our journey as a country. And today we want to discuss Uganda's constitution fault lines since independence. Where is the problem? And of course, we know from back history, we need to try to trace our constitutional journey from 1962, as early as 1962, when we first received our independence, until today. We have had almost 4 constitutions along the way. And I don't know, maybe what is happening this time around, we might have another constitutional amendment, and possibly we might have the 5th or 6th constitution as the way it goes. But we need to discuss the 4 constitutions, the journey until today, where at least last week also we had the conversation and we just celebrated the 26 years of the 1995 Constitution. So that's the whole journey that we want to have on this debate today. And joined, and the panelists that will have to discuss this, this journey is, let me start from my far right. My far right is Honourable Gerald Karuhanga. Gerald Karuhanga is a former Member of Parliament of Ntungamo Municipality. And this is your second time on this show. Welcome back, Gerald.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon, viewers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gerald, and thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you.
Yeah, then, of course, the UPC Ideologue, and of course, Joseph Ochieno is on the UPC leadership. And of course, he has a lot to speak about the Constitution, being that, of course, your party was part of the start of this journey of the Constitution. So
the parent of Uganda's constitutionalism.
Yeah, we'll need to see that. Joseph, welcome back on the show.
Good.
Yeah, almost a regular panelist, yes. And then Sarah Bireete, a regular panelist and the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance, a lawyer, just like Gerard. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
Yeah, thank you. Then finally is a person so much known in the spaces and, of course, the government, retired Major Awich Pollar, Okwiri. Formerly, he contested for leader West Municipality, but also is now the Director of External Services of the NRM party. He sits both on the NEC and the SEC, right? Yeah, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Greetings to viewers, and also very happy to meet these eminent Ugandans. I know many of them, but I'm privileged to be with them in this discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Right there, I think we'll need to start with you.
Why not start with the honorable man? Start with the honorable man, or start with the lady. Okay, or start ladies first.
The parent of, like you say, the parent of the country. Let's start from there. How has Uganda performed in terms of constitutionalism since independence?
Oh, that's very interesting and spot on me. Actually, I didn't expect it would start on. But look, I would say abysmally. You know, I consider the constitution that was celebrated last week as the NRA constitution. The simple reason is that political parties were not allowed to participate in the constitution making process, number one. Number two, I suggested that we are the parents of Uganda's constitutionalism, and that parenthood is not only UPC. It was Uganda's independent political parties that existed at the time, the kingdoms that existed at the time, and the wider national identity. So in other words, the first constitution of Uganda involved all political parties, which naturally happens across the world, and indeed all key stakeholders. So in that sense, I believe that the 1962 Constitution was possibly the most representative constitution for all the peoples of Uganda. It's a pity, we had a conversation on these matters the other day, and that perhaps that Ugandans were not allowed, for various reasons, to develop the process of national constitutionalism, both within political parties and organizations, and indeed the citizenry. Because having having had our independence in 1962, and as the democratic nation started to evolve, so did conflicts that the most controversial constitutional amendments, 1960, 66, and 67, at the time. Now you can consider the most constitutional process is 1995, and I'll explain why. But the point is this, that when the process of making the most recent constitution did take place, I'm sort of deliberately jumping on, I was in exile, and we argued substantially against the wasting of Uganda's money in the so-called CA. And part of the argument at the time was that if NRA came from the bush, claiming they had fought for multipartyism and pluralism and return to multipartyism and whatever the case, and rigged elections in Barara North, and that they were lucky now they're together with DP in government, and that now they had power. All these guys necessarily needed to do was to, and they had the powers, was to return Uganda, because they're accusing UPC of abrogation of the constitution. Just return Uganda to 1962 independence constitution. Now, of course, the lawyers are here in a parliamentary system, which we did have. Today, I don't know what system we've got. You basically table constitutional amendments, as it were, to make suggestions. So my own considered opinion was that 1989, 89, 90, 91, the historical process that Sarah will very ably go through, leading to 1995, were really not necessary. Legal notice number one notwithstanding, we could simply have said that, well, we've got a new regime in place, we are very good new guys in town, and what were the errors of 1962 constitution? I think the biggest contention was the abolition of kingdoms, 1967. Do we restore them? A constitution amendment. Did we need to make sure that we went ahead and created a new constitution? Absolutely not. I am deliberately going from the other two extremes, as you can see, because I know it's the introductory part of the conversation. The 1962 constitution, which had been agreed upon at independence in Lancaster in 1961, 60 years exactly this year, was one in which not only did we agree on key matters that pertained to Uganda's independence and constitutionalism and nationalism. And I was watching a video of Milton Obote in America with the President Kennedy. But that one in which, once we have our friends in the National Assembly, all they needed to do, I repeat, very introductorily, I repeat, simply say that, well, we want to make a constitution amendment rather than the creation of a new constitution. However, having said that, and having wasted resources with the 1995 constitution, and the people who participate in that process who think that it was a visit to heaven, they really treasure it, and I appreciate, from 1995, one regime, term limits imposed, thinking UPC, crashed. Age limits because of Bote, crashed. What can I go for? How many things can I go through? The same constitution that took so much resources, so much energy, and in many cases, Museveni could go ahead and invoke his Luwero thing, that this is what we fought for, in other words, causing huge amount of loss of lives, At a stroke, you crack it, including declaring to the citizen that it really doesn't matter. It's rather unfortunate. Going forward as a country, it is possible for us, even with the NRA constitution, for us to have the amendments, for Museveni and whoever leads Uganda tomorrow to begin to respect this constitution, For us in UPC, for me, I'm quite happy to embrace it in the interest of Ugandans and say if this is the Uganda constitution, NRA created notwithstanding, we should respect it. We should respect it because we believe that the most important people in this country and the most important thing in this country are the citizens of the Republic of Uganda, and the constitution is basically the little bit, tiny little Bible that guides us as a people. It is possible going forward.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for giving us that history. Maybe
you want me now?
Yeah, I would. Since it's your maiden appearance.
Okay, I must say I just wanted to be polite by giving the first chance to my colleagues. Of course, definitely I would have loved and rushed to speak first, but I thought it was polite for me. Now, your question was the constitutionalism since independence. I like to say that as a country, we have tried, and we are trying we have tried to uphold the culture of constitutionalism. I will want to, or at some stage, somebody may want to point out or highlight the two interventions that you may call it not constitutional as a country. For example, 1971 coup, or even talk about the proposed pigeonhole constitution, whether it was constitutional. Talk about the 71 coup, which intervened in the constitutional process. Leave alone the overthrow of Amin itself in 79, which was not constitutional, and the taking over power by NRM in 86, which was not constitutional. All that interruptions notwithstanding, I am still maintaining that as Uganda we have tried. You may note that in the current constitution, there is a provision which empowers the people to resist unconstitutional means. I don't know whether packaged well, but my land colleagues will say it that way. So this was not in the 67 constitution, but NRM took it like it was a unwritten provision, so it was explored. But why am I saying that we have not done badly constitutionalism? As a country, we have remained one, governed as one country. Under the 1995 constitution, there's a schedule calling itself indigenous communities. You could loosely say tribes. We are 65. 65. Now, holding 65 communities together to date, I think it is an achievement in constitutionalism. Because if we are broken into pieces, we wouldn't even be talking about the constitution. So to me, that is an achievement itself. Many countries don't have. In Europe, for example, you have nation states. Germany is for the Germans. France is for the French. Italy is for the Italians. It's only Switzerland which has the Swiss German, the Swiss Italian, the Swiss French, and another Swiss, 4 communities. And incidentally, Switzerland is the oldest democracy, even when it's like tribes. Germany already in history, in 18-something, it was still in formation. France in 17, they are still fighting. So for a country to hold itself into one with various communities, 65 in our case under the schedule, is not mean achievement. After all, we have examples to prove to the contrary. Somali was bigger than Uganda, maybe 4 times. As we talk now, Somalia is no more. It's like 8 countries. Libya got their independence in 1959 and as one country. Now, about 6 or 8 Libya. Sudan, 1956, they were a country. Now we have South Sudan and North Sudan. Now the Sudan main, we even have Darfur threatening to break, to have 3. And the list goes on. Morocco, why they have refused to be part of AU is because AU had supported the breakaway, Western Sahara. It is now 2 countries, or formerly 1. So the fact that we have remained as a country itself, to me, we have done well in constitutionalism by maintaining and remaining alive as a country. The rest we can discuss. Now, about the diversion, as my friend says, from the 67 constitution, is that, of course, when NRM came in power, there were options. There was a possibility of remaining with the 67 or even amending where necessary. But you recall that there was an option of consulting the views. So the views that was consulted, you may say it was doctored or what, but the statistics and the data, as I said, the views tended to say, we make another one. Before that constitution, it did not come from nowhere that we threw. Remember, even the government was using the 67 constitution anyway, which Amin had suspended, but NRM used it, but with specific modifications in terms of amendment. But the views that were collected, was it a Sempewa view commission, or collected the amendment? Sempewa collected the original. So the original Sempewa commission was to decide Should we continue with the 67 constitution? Should we amend it? And the views, my brother, was that we put a new one. So a new one was put in place. So when a new one was put in place, and it is more what happened. I also wanted to comment on my brother's view that recently we celebrated an NRM constitution. I don't remember any celebration. I am not aware about a celebration of a constitution. All I am aware about is on the 10th, on the 9th, we had an independence celebration. So I don't know.
On the 8th, we made the 26 years of the 1995 Constitution.
Yeah, so as NRM, I was not aware about the celebration.
There was no national celebration.
Yeah. Yes.
Then that's manifestation of how bad it is, because
yes.
It is a clear and NRA constitution. But of course, yeah, for information, this program very specifically had a review of 26 years of the 1995 constitution, which with all intents and purposes is NRA constitution. But no, fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, now, this current constitution took effect on the 9th. I remember when the celebration was in Fort Forton. Now, I am not so keen about the party celebrating or NRM celebrating, but we had independence celebration. So, what I'm saying is, constitutionally, we have had interruptions on unconstitutional eruptions, starting with the 62, where a new constitution replacing the 61 came in place by way of members of parliament being informed that honorable members, go to your pigeonhole and check, there's a new copy. So to me, that was another interruption in the constitutional process. How constitutional it is, maybe it is a matter of interpretation. I also do take note of the 71 coup and come along with the 79 taking over. Because Amin was also claiming that this government was a government as established by law. So if you try to overthrow Amin, you'd be charged of treason, meaning that Amin also wanted this government to change by law. So that is constitutional law for you. Even if you take over government today, tomorrow whoever tries to overthrow you commits treason. So we have had this interruption. But I am saying, as a country, we are not doing badly. We have the three arms of government. We have the legislature working. We have the executive working. We have the judiciary working. So laws are being enacted. Amendments are being done in line with the Constitution. So we are not very badly off. We have, so far, done well.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Sarah is itching to get in. Sarah? Tracy.
Yeah, it is, it is good to speak after my hobby in the voluntary solidarity and a long-term friend and comrade.
He's the chairman.
And and of course, being a director at the NRM Secretariat, of course, he has to say they are doing well. Otherwise, but if we go back to independence, Demian and dear listeners, the Munster report, which was commissioned to specifically assess how best Uganda can move along constitutional lines. It had two key observations. One was that the political elite have no capacity or willingness to compromise on contentious issues, and also that there was a need to address issues to do with transition. From there, we went into the 1962 Constitution, which delivered the independence, discussed partly in Lancaster. Legicode had a little input by then, which was Parliament. And basically, it was a negotiation of political interests. Little to do with the people. The other big challenge with that 1962 Constitution is that it had very little to do with civil liberties, like we have the Bill of Rights under Chapter 4 of our Constitution. So, but that's what kicked off our journey. Then we had the first amendment on the first anniversary of independence, where we brought in the ceremonial president, kick out to the Governor General, and declare Uganda a republic. Unfortunately, that first amendment came, as much as it had other issues, but it came after an election and then a court challenge and decision, and the amendment thought to defeat the court decision. And the roots of that is traced in our Article 92 of the Constitution today, which says Parliament should never legislate in an effort to defeat a court decision. From then came the 1966 crisis. Of course, the referendum on West counties, 1966 crisis, which led to abolition, suspension of kingdoms.
Yeah, actually, correction. The pigeon hole is the 67.
Yes,
not
and
the
then
62.
the 1967.
No,
so those are the three.
Not the 62.
Those are the
67.
three constitutions ahead of the 1995 constitution that we are operating on today. So the 1967 was the pigeonhole, which then said, let's do away. I happened to have a discussion with Madam Nora Matovu. She's the outgoing chairperson of the Equal Opportunities Commission. She was the pioneer chairperson of the Equal Opportunities Commission. She happened to be a clerk of parliament at the time the 1967 constitution was introduced. So she told me that they sat with a ruler and cut out sections they did not want, and then sent a copy to the printer. Print minus this we've cut out. So that was the nature of the amendment. And then it was thrown into the pigeonholes, and then what happened? A repeat of what the NRM rehearsed recently, but in a severe way. Because whereas
it couldn't be severe.
No,
UPC was an elected government, NRA is not.
I'm coming, Joe, and I know Joe and Awich will now come for me. But as a constitutional watchdog, I think I have also to play my role. So, so what happened?
You'll be protected
yes,
as much as
during the
There's no process. There's no section to allow anyone to come for you. Trust me, sister.
So what happened during that pigeonhole constitution is that military surrounded parliament. But it did not enter parliament. They surrounded parliament, the MPs gathered, they were told they have to debate and pass the constitution in that sitting, and they will find copies in their pigeonholes. So they did not even look at the copies as they debated. And that's how it was enacted, in one sitting. So from there we moved to, of course, the controversy with the Emergency Detention Act 1968, detention without trial, arrest you for 6 months, the issue that again NRM is reintroducing. And you must have been good students really of this crisis as NRM. And good enough, because I call it good enough that the people who championed that Emergency Powers Act, the 6 ministers, fell the first victim. And in my view, it served them right. And they had to seek reliefs from the East African Court of Appeal because of the law they had enacted, thinking they are doing it for other people, and it caught up with them. And I hope that the Almighty will be faithful to us, and whoever tampers with the Constitution again also falls the first victim of their machinations. So that is on authority of ex parte Matovu and the 6 ministers that were detained without trial, and they were crying for their freedom, the freedom that they had taken away with the power of a pen because they were in privileged positions. So from there, of course, the crisis that built up with even the gold, investigation of the gold scandal in DRC that gave rise now to Obote's coup in 1971. Either given his education levels, did not want to pretend to understand the Constitution, or he did not want to waste people's time. Because where I sit as civil society, I don't see a difference with the Idi Amin's decrees and a system where a constitution is done away with whenever it gets in the way of leaders, yet the duty of the constitution is to raise a red flag and keep all leaders in check. But in our situation, whenever the constitution gets in the way of leaders, leaders don't give way. It's the constitution that is destroyed.
So are you trying to suggest that you're better off having Obote? I mean,
I would rather have, you see,
who never pretended.
we had Idi Amin who never pretended to rule under constitution and introduced the decrees as a way of whoever he wanted to proceed. So he would give declarations. The law now all land belongs to Uganda. That is the land decree of 1975. The same that NRM is tinkering with. They want also to reintroduce Idi Amin's land decree, but they are just being diplomatic about it and deceiving people. The way you see our original constitution put a mechanism for peaceful handover of power. But when President Museveni made 9 years and the constitution was in his way, then he did away with the provision. The constitution put another line, a refreeze line of age limit. When the president was approaching again 74 years, then he did away with the red line. Instead of the red line stopping him, he destroys it and passes. So that has been our nature of constitutionalism since independence, and it is yet to change. So where you credit Idi Amin is that for him, he did not pretend that he's going under common law principles or following the written law or coded law. He said, I will code my law, and he did it. Even when we have coded law, the elite who are pretending with Ugandans pretend to be moving along coded law, but they do away with it whenever it ties them or gets in their way. So I don't see a difference. I would rather have a honest person who says I will decree whoever I want to rule than a person who deceives that he's going by law but destroys the law whenever it gets in their way. So to date, we have a contentious debate on bail, which is taking us away back to the detention without trial for 6 months of the 1968 Emergency Powers Act. So, whereas I want to agree with the Awich that we have moved as a country, and he was honest saying we have tried. I wanted to ask him how he would score that trying, because even a pupil who sits an exam and scores 1% will say they have tried.
So
we have been moving.
95%. This one is 95%.
So we have been moving.
Compared to
but
Somalia.
Even when a vehicle Demian is moving in reverse gear, it is also moving. So we need to assess. Are we moving from one place to another? Do we know our destination? Or even when we are in reverse gear, we think we are moving as a country?
Thank you very much, sir. And Honourable, picking from what Comrade Awich just said, they're comparing with Somalia. And they've scored 95%.
Why do we compare ourselves with the worst? Why do we compare ourselves with the worst of the worst?
In as far as the cohesion of a country is concerned, I've compared with many. I've not compared with Somalia, but I've compared in aspect of cohesion as a country.
Honourable, quite a lot of issues have come out, and we're tracing the fault lines to date from 1962. Where are we?
It is interesting to listen in. You know, you can very easily compare. Yeah. Sometimes if you have the bottom 5 out of 100, then you can compare the bottom 5 and say who is the best of the bottom 5. Yeah. So the bottom 5, yes, could have scored 95%. But I also wonder whether it is even still possible. But the bottom 5 can even still, you can say you scored 95% in the circumstances. So one of the cardinal principles of constitutional interpretation is the living rule. This constitutional order is not established in oblivion, that it must be there and then then there is a constitution there, and then there is a country and people somewhere. No. There is a constitution and there are people. It's established by the people to manage their affairs, to make sure they live together, they live in harmony, they live in progress. In our own case, it's basically drama. So for 35 years, over 59 years of independence, you have a leader who says, oh, who said a ballot paper, piece of paper, piece of paper can get me out of power? You know? That's the Constitution says the people shall elect their leaders through a ballot paper. That's where they hold their mandate, and that's the way they can express their mandate. But the leader for 35 years says, this piece of paper is nothing. I killed my animal, I've just started skinning it, and you're saying where? I go where?
He said that in my district, in
Yes.
my sub-county.
In your sub-county.
Yes.
So that's the constitutional order that we see. That one morning, a highly celebrated justice of the High Court hears a matter, decides that the so-called PRA suspects should be released and they go home. And their case can go on. All we see is a heavily organized black mambas, as they came to be, soldiers who are trained by the use of the resources of Ugandans to protect and defend our country. They walk in, and there is a skirmish, a total disregard of the law, right in the temple of justice, in the courts of law. And then you say, we have a constitution. Not so long ago, so come around, 2005, for me was probably one of them around that time when Parliament removed the term limits. I think if there is any dark day that we saw that this country has seen, because what we must keep at the hindsight is what is properly written in our Constitution. One of the very first sentences, knowing our history, that's what the Constitution says. Knowing where we've come from.
Knowing our
turbulent history. A very history full of turmoil, chaos.
Allegedly.
Fighting, we kill each other, because there was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of killing each other. The history wasn't that good, honestly.
No.
But so we thought the 1995 Constitution was a departure, that we've all appreciated, that we've killed each other, we've shed blood 9 times trying to change leadership of this country. And that has not happened in peaceful and harmonious environment. That we haven't seen. So we said, maybe this time round, let's move on. Let's depart. Let's have a departure. And then come 2005, against the whole country, making lots of alarms and saying, look, people, no, we have not tested this provision. Let's keep it. That was removed, by the way, with a bribe of 5 million shillings per member of parliament then. So that must also be recorded by history. And then, so the main safety measure is carried away. Now the second safety measure, this time I was of age, and luckily I was in parliament.
Were you arrested?
Only arrested. I think for me that day was the first time what the day I can say was in my life ever come so close to death. Because I was strangled, my head was tilted, and luckily we bumped into another group that was carrying another member of parliament by these commandos, and that's how the arm of the commando who was holding my literally blocking me from breathing. That's how he when he hit the other guys, the other group that was carrying the MP, so his hand moved, and that's how I got some oxygen. And then the policemen actually now started shouting, the policemen of parliament, because they realized I was actually dying. And then the other colleagues who were already in the van also shouted.
My God.
And that's literally, so you can imagine if I had had an extra 2 minutes, I would be no more. So then the constitution was again abrogated, abused. The age limit was removed. Of course, we were thrown in jail. It was sad.
Yeah.
It was really sad. But in all this, where are the people?
And maybe it's important for the listeners to know that you were picked from the chambers the same way Idi Amin group picked Ben Chwanuka from office as a Chief Justice.
As a Chief Justice. Yes, we're in Parliament. We're picked from the chambers, not even our offices, but inside Parliament. During a sitting of Parliament.
Recalling our history.
So,
trying to compare.
Now we find ourselves
They are trying.
in a situation where the constitution becomes a tool not to manage and ensure better plight for the people, but a tool to destroy the very people, their aspirations, their hopes, their confidence, their dreams. So the people now see this constitution intertwined with a regime as a special tool for them, not just to retain power, but also to abuse power. So we are really at it. I remember when we were being taught by the wonderful professors like Professor Olokonyango. I remember they used to teach us, I remember the topic on the constitution at crossroads. Now I think we are even, because now the constitution seems to have been hijacked, and now it's one of those arms or tools. So if there are grenades, and so it's one of those tools now, one of the arms that they have, and the people now have been left on their own. So we have to find a way as the people to see how do we restore constitutionalism in our country, because that's no longer the case.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I think, Joseph, you have...
Yeah, I'm very sad, actually.
The fault line started possibly with the UPC.
I am absolutely coming onto it.
Yes.
I am extremely sad, and by the way, I'm really touched, and I've been on air for as long as possibly 30 years. I've been on this program, but I'm genuinely touched. And let me give the trajectory. The Independence Constitution was gotten upon by representatives of the people. Political parties and organizations are representatives of the people. In a democracy where legislators are elected when they go to the House, they go there to fully represent the people. Unless it's a situation that requires a referendum, some kind of form, broad petition, some silly uprising going to kill people in order to create some kind of pseudo-constitutionalism, So the 1962 Constitution, with all the political parties that existed at the time, all the established kingdoms and nationalities, including Bukedi and Lango, were represented. So that was the people's constitution. The 1962 independence government was the first democratically elected government by all the peoples of Uganda. So they represented the voices and peoples of Uganda. Constitutions, indeed, are generally sacrosanct. They're the Bibles, but they're terms of reference for the country, as my brother suggested. So sometimes I argue, sometimes wonder, no, they're amendable, isn't it? We don't argue that it shouldn't be amended. So they're not cut in stone. Even the American Constitution, the First Amendment, every now and again, this funny guy Trump, there's an argument that they nearly wanted to amend the First Amendment. So by and large, constitutions are amended. So the first major constitutional amendment in 1963 was one that abolished that terrible office of the Governor General and created the office of titular president. We the people, we Ugandans. So by and large, that was absolutely fine. And it was the sensible thing because it was a nation growing. The 1966 Constitution was a direct response to the internal contradictions in our country, and particularly the youth of this country really need, and I urged them in my column last week, to go back and attempt to read Uganda's history, and not only to read from a UPC perspective, to read what Sir Edward was saying, maybe what Ben Chiwanuka has got to say, what Comrade Museveni has got to say in his 10th edition after the bail legislation, so that we genuinely know where we're coming from as a people, and particularly our generation, possibly beyond this kind of experiences going forward. So 1966 was a reaction to an insurrection. It's interesting, my brother, which was emphasizing the entity of the nation state Uganda. In 1966 and 67, the solidity of one Uganda was fundamentally at threat. Buganda wanted to secede. Milton Obote helped hold this country together. Was it done? Was there any other way it could have been done? I'm not quite sure. Let academicians and let constitutional lawyers, and Sarah, you can come in, have a conversation about it. Yes.
Yes. Whereas Joseph is making a good point, I'm wondering, you had the majority of MPs in Parliament. Why did Obote have to hijack their mandate and not let them be the ones to amend the constitution by debating, involving stakeholders? Why did he dictate the amendments? Was he the only one concerned?
That is actually very interesting, because I wanted to respond to that, and twice I've been wanting to say that. Part of the problem in this country is that even if you brought my elder Paul Semogere here today, he might actually say something completely contrary to one or two of his members. The 1966 Constitution was debated. Sarah, the problem, as we discussed last week, was that it really depends on whom we have conversations with. Beyond this program, and Demian, I'm quite happy to constitute a panel, where we have discussions about facts who were there, including elders who were there.
The pigeonhole was debated.
I'm talking about 1966. I'm bringing you to 1966 was debated. The pigeonhole constitution has to bring it, constitutional amendments, and there's been a legislator. I have advised members of parliament, including the mother of British Parliament. I have sent written submissions. There's nothing unusual that a legislator comes with a particular position, a debate takes and says, this is my opinion. Now, were these zombies in 1966, they're not only UPCs and they're not only people from Akokura and Nagongera, they're Ugandans from across the country. Who were these MPs in 1967? Who were so much of funny cowards, who simply had to say, yes, yes. I'm not quite sure, Sarah. But I don't really want to confine ourselves to that. But you made a fair point, that why we have a conversation. But I can tell you that is not the fact. So 1967 Constitution was a review that, having considered the contradictions we had, that yes, we needed to abolish kingdoms and Uganda had to go Republican. That, in my opinion, if I see the challenges facing us today and some of the dynamics, I actually think it was one of the boldest moves. The only problem as we build constitutionalism and nationhood is that sometimes some leaders, including popular leaders, they like to make easy decisions. So as a country, we may also have to go through Obote, Museveni, Amin, and all those other people and determine what were the most difficult decisions these guys had to make and by what means they used. Was it going via Kabamba? Was that the most difficult route? No, neither here nor there. So I think 66, as I said, in response to Buganda seeking to secede, 67 seeking to neutralize that and simply say, no, Uganda is going to become a republic. We can have a conversation about whether or not it was right for us to do so. So beyond that, I don't know. I don't know what this young guy called Museveni could have done in 1966, 1967. Which go back to the NRA secretary and ask, what would Museveni have done in 1966, and what is his opinion about 1967? Did we need to leave Buganda to break apart? Would Museveni today get an instruction, leave that funny corner in Lakasero and retire to...
We would have made a wide consultation.
The consultation, he was he's a leader of a parliamentary government, as it was. His consultation, I don't know which consultation took him to Luero anyway. Indeed, and I don't know which consultation took him to Luero, and this is a serious point. So really, by and large, up to that stage, Sarah is actually right, and I think, sorry, it was actually a way to contextualize this constitutionalism in how then the coming of a mean, because it's a constitutional change, a major event, and it's so indeed 1989, rather than 1979. It's interesting, the interim parliament, starting with Moshi, you know, how these guys compose themselves, the coming of Lule. Museveni might actually argue that, look, we started in Moshi and determined that this was the interim parliament. The interim parliament had the powers. What are you funny guys in City Square saying that you want Lule without work? You know, you didn't elect Lule. Those are some of the challenges that young Ugandans need to know, because many people don't know that Lule was elected by in an interim parliament surrounded by these guys who had come from Warfront in Moshi. And so did the same people elect, after withdrawing the powers from Lule, elect Binaisa. And the same guys, as it is, withdrawing powers from Binaisa and saying that under the same circumstances, a military commission come in to guide Uganda to what Moshi had said, that 18 months after the fall of Kampala, multi-party elections must take place, and Binaisa was believing in his umbrella politics. And Museveni, of course, as usual, was dancing around to it because he genuinely did not believe in pluralist multi-party elections. So, come to 1980 general elections, you know, we had the mandate, and unfortunately, as I said, I don't know what happened between 1981 after elections until 1985 when these guys, the NRA guys, joined DP to break the constitution again. I really don't think there was any major constitutional amendment to change that did take place at the time that I can think of. But you know what? I think as a country, beyond some of those mini contradictions which are past, we tend to go back to them when it's convenient. And yet the reality is where Sarah is fixing us onto. This NRA constitution, 26 years later, Museveni is such a tired man today after 35 years. What really is the possibility that we can pick a fudged constitution, whatever it is today, to try and be able to build a nation going forward, where there is democracy, where there's the voice of the people, where there's genuine consensus, and where, as I wrote in my piece last week, that once again people can come across political parties and divides and interests and simply say, in national interest, we agree to disagree, but in national interest, perhaps I concede a particular self-interest where the big focus is the future and the young citizens of this country. I think that really is where this debate should be taking us. And I know as part of an independent series this October, you're going to be looking at many other things. And as we're discussing independence surely this October, we should be going beyond this very particular issue.
I'm sure Comrade Awich has rejoined us. But before we go, of course, for the break, I would want you to make your rejoinders, and also Sarah. Then we broke off for a break and get back to the specifics of the Constitution. Yeah.
Well, my rejoinder is that I still maintain, as a country, we're on the constitutional path. There are several comments which are made in specifics, and I don't think I'll reply to all. But I want to maintain one thematic concern, that the dynamicity of the law. A law is not static. And my brother agrees with me, and he states instances that permitted the application of the principle that a law is not hard and frozen.
So are we having you disagreeing with NRM?
Finally.
That's what, because I said I agreed. But I also don't want us to agree with it, not as a matter of principle, but only as it shoots. Because some people tend to see it when it shoots them. For example, we have heard of a claim of rule of law. When opposition members go to court and win a case, or like Gerald Karuhanga went about when the MPs were given money and the court ruled in his favor, we tend to say the court is fair and independent. And when the same court tomorrow rules against him, said, you know, this is a Museveni court. So we shouldn't let it be so subjective like that. So if we agree on the principle of the dynamicity of the law, then let it cut across the board. Not only that it was dynamics, because the situations when Uganda threatened to break away, it needed the flexibility of the law to be amended. No, we agree as a matter of principle that a law is not written in a stone. Therefore, even the constitutional amendment that we have talked about, age limit and the rest, we look at it in that dynamics. What, however, is important if we talk of constitutionalism is Constitution provides for a constitutional procedure for amendment. If we deviate from that procedural provision prescribed, then there we have scored low. But mere amendment of the Constitution does not mean a deviation from constitutional amendment.
A quick one before which leaves the floor. For example, the amendment on age limit. Did the chapter 18 of our Constitution, which provides for amendment, include the army attacking Parliament and invading chambers and beating MPs? Is it part of the procedure?
No, but even then it is not on record as part of the procedure. What the no, the procedure envisaged here is,
yes,
the procedure as envisaged is prescribed under the law. So if you deviate from one, okay, like for example a bill, if you don't make a first reading, it doesn't go to committee stage, if it doesn't go to this, then you have deviated from the procedure. So similarly in constitutional amendment, there are that procedures. So if you deviate from those procedures set by the law, then you have deviated. But the element of the army, of course, I don't want to comment about that, but this is not the envisaged legal procedures that if you deviate, you can challenge in courts of law. Okay? So if somebody felt that the army's presence...
And for the record, we should really all condemn deviation, including the butcher and torture of legislators.
If somebody felt aggrieved that the presence of the army was a constitutional deviation, it should have been raised. And indeed, it was raised in Mbale, in the court process that went on in Mbale. I think many members saw an affidavit to that effect, and court had its views. Now, yes, many members saw an affidavit mentioning the court intervention, that it was substantial to have caused the wrong amendment, but court had its face. But as I said, people also take courts in subjective and circumstantial relationship. If it rules in favor of Honourable Karuhanga, the court is okay. If it rules against you, the court is not okay. But in this case, the court pronounced itself because there are several affidavits sworn to that effect about, in fact, the CDF was called in the court. The CDF was called to testify. So these were arguments raised in courts of law, debated by court, consumed, and court made a pronouncement. So even the presence of the army, if it is, which it was a matter discussed by court and resolved that it did not substantially affect the outcome.
So we should respect the decisions of court.
Yes.
What is your complaint about bail as NRM?
What I wanted, so if I would finish about the dynamics, I think we should agree. So therefore, the amendments that come in place should be seen in that respect. Now, on the question of bail and on the question of the Black Mamba, this is why I said there are several specific references that I did not feel like going into it, but let me mention that the bail issue, first of all, there's a feeling that there's a gap in that criminal justice process. There's feelings among the people that there's something wrong in the criminal justice. There are research done. Data are there to show you how many people benefited from the bail.
Which report?
No, not a report. The other time appeared with Attorney General NBS. Attorney General had a data which he had got from DPP to show in a very disaggregated data how many people had committed capital offenses, how many people have got bond, and how many of them had defaulted, and how many were actually arrested for similar offenses. Okay. Because when you arrest, you fine. So the data was got from DPP, and it's there available, and it is worrying. So there's a feeling that there's something wrong with criminal justice process. And that is why the feeling is even reflected in mob justice. When Okello is, for example, in Lira, when Okello cuts off his wife's neck because of a domestic quarrel on the street, and the people kill Okello there, it's not actually because Okello cut the wife's neck on the street. Because the people know yesterday or the other day, Opio did the same thing, and he has got bail. So the Okello killing today is not because he has actually killed his wife It's because many other people have done the same and they are free. So this is one other ordinary, not a very clinical research, but the feelings of the people. So the bail that come to is also connected to the fact that Honourable Karuhanga knows very well that when a bail is granted under the current legal regime, the state has no right of appeal. It's one scenario in law where it is non-appealable. Even if you kill 20 people now and you go and court grants you bail, there's nothing the state can do that we appeal against that bail. No, it's the end. So what the state tries to protect the interests of the victims and the society is that the state, if it has any other criminal claim against you, it will arrest you. That is why there has always been such kind of arrest. Now, to look for another charge. Now, to cure this, that is why now there's a mooting of said, hey, fellow citizens, why don't we revisit this? Why don't we look at this bail?
Just
if there is a possibility of a gap of criminal justice system.
That's very interesting, actually. Just a brief interjection. What do you understand? What's the view within the judiciary about this bail question? Because many of these, you don't necessarily need to go to make a constitutional amendment every time there is a, as you consider.
Okay, the view I can answer. The views in the judiciary.
Why wouldn't the judiciary just issue? Why wouldn't the Chief Justice simply say that, well...
Your question to me was, what is the view in the judiciary? The view in the judiciary, if I can read from His Lordship of Windolo and read from the former Chief Justice, Benjamin Odogo, their views is, bail is a discretional
of court.
Yes.
And part of the independence.
Okay, give it to the court. That is their view. Have I answered you?
Yes, and that said, therefore,
exactly.
Why wouldn't it be left to them, knowing very well that the research is from them anyway, they know clearly what it is, that the discretionally now become discretionally tougher. Rather than,
I want us to have this conversation extended after the break. So I want him to first conclude.
So I would like to say about the dynamicity, but if you want on the views, that is that I have told you the views of the judiciary. The judiciary or the judges are saying that. And remember, let me say that judges apply the law. They work with the law. Even if you remove that today and give them another one tomorrow, they'll use it. So the judges have no fault at all. The judges are saying, for us, what we know now, the law tells us we have the discretion, okay? So the judicial officers simply, the law is their hoe. If you give them the hoe, they use it for digging. So they're citing what the law, but we are now saying that very law that they're saying is not cast on stones. That is what we're saying. So let's agree with the dynamicity of the, finally, I may come back with something. There's the issue of Honourable Karuhanga. This is again the specific, that when President Museveni mentions about the ballot and the animal and all this, it is actually not being constitutional. I think maybe it is quoted out of context. I sit at the party IS organ. The thing is, what Museveni is saying, we have fought, we have won a military war. If the new war is a ballot paper, how do we lose it? Now, one way of not losing it, yes, listen, one way of not losing it is we have a manifesto, okay? We have a manifesto which captures all aspects. We market to the people. The people, when the people vote us, we have a social contract. So in other words, Museveni is saying, this war is easy to win. Win it in a way that meet the aspirations of the people, and the people will vote you. That paper, if that is the war on the paper, we shall get it. How do we get it? Market, design a good manifesto, market it to the people, get a social contract to the people. In other words, devise means of winning that ballot paper. It did not mean that I will.
I think you should stop there.
No. Why? No, because this is an interpretative. This is an interpretative. Unless you really want to get the context that you mean it. I have discussed this. Why, Honourable Karuhanga? Why do we do this? As a party, we have even gone to a point of saying we want periodic show of departments on how far you have gone with manifesto implementation. We want judiciary to tell us. We told the people.
Judiciary implementing manifesto?
Yes. Listen. Who's a new one? Why don't you let me finish?
Okay.
With the judiciary, I have a copy of the manifesto.
You see?
Judiciary is supposed to
yes.
How
How does it implement? We promised the people we are going to recruit judges. That is judiciary. So you have to tell the people, yes, that is judiciary, Sarah. We are saying in the manifesto, we promise the people that part of the problem in judiciary is insufficiency of judges. We said, yes, you elect us, we shall recruit. And recently we have been elected. Is that outside judiciary?
I will respond.
Is that outside
I will
judiciary?
respond.
Yes, after the break.
You meant judiciary complying manifesto is judges ruling. No, I don't mean judges passing judgment. I meant judiciary as a department.
Quick one.
Yes.
Afande Awichi. In our constitution, judiciary is not a self-recruiting body. The recruitment is done by executive and parliament. Judicial Service Commission, which is an arm of the executive, because it has a permanent secretary. It's like a ministry. Does the interviews. So the judiciary where Justice Owinyi sits is not a recruiting body for judiciary. It is the Judicial Service Commission, which is part of the executive, with the approval of parliament.
But what I'm telling you is what we have said and what is in the manifesto. That in the areas of judiciary, we want to recruit judges, and we have done that, and we are doing that. So no aspect is out of the manifesto. So when the president talks about the ballot throwing us out of power, it's just saying we know the rule of the game. And the rule of the game is meet the aspirations of the people because it is reflected in the ballot paper.
Thank you very much, Afande.
It's getting hot.
Right there, I'm sure the second round will be a little more energized than this. And of course, viewers out there, thank you for always following this conversation. Kindly, we are streaming live on our channel on YouTube, Civic Space TV, but also on Facebook, we are live. And also join the conversation, Chat Show UG. Chat Show UG on Twitter. Hashtag is trending out there. Kindly be part of this conversation. Let's have a short break and return with the next segment. Thank you. Welcome back from that short break. We ended on a high, and we want to see how far we can go with this discussion. We are trying to analyze our constitutional journey as fault lines since independence, and where's the problem. And of course, we had the contention and the heated debates on what, of course, Honourable Karuhanga put across Dr. Afande Awich, and we want to see how far we can go with that debate. Of course, joined on the panel, like I earlier introduced, is Honourable Karuhanga Gerald, formerly of Ntungamo Municipality. We have Joseph Ochieno of the UPC, Sarah Bireete, the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance, and
I'm the honorary non-politician.
Okay.
Afande Awich.
Very biased. Very biased.
He's making his maiden appearance, and of course, he's the Director of External Services with the NRM. From the conversation and where Honourable Awich has ended, I want to invite you, Honourable Gerald Karuhanga.
Can I say something?
You wanted a rejoinder. Of course, you've brought some information that you need to pick from. I'll give you 2 seconds, then I will invite in Honourable Karuhanga.
Yeah, thank you very much, viewers. I had mentioned in perspective that when President Museveni says we cannot lose power on the mere paper, I had said that he meant that to get that paper, to get that ballot, there are set goals. You put in the manifesto, people vote for you on that, and you implement it. And I gave an example which almost gave a misunderstanding. I said the manifesto covers all aspects, including, I think my choice of diction could have caused contradiction because I said judiciary. But what we, in our speak, that I have brought here, this is the manifesto securing your future, including Honourable Gerald's future. Now, I'd like to say, in this case, there is the aspect of ensuring justice and equity. And in one of the NRM says, way forward. NRM is going to mention many other things, but I like to say, in A, B, C, D up to I says, recruit more judicial and other officers to fill the established positions in the judiciary. Okay? So when I said that, my colleagues were up at arms why I'm saying the manifesto covers. Because the manifesto is a social contract between the people and the party that if you vote for us, we shall do this. So there's no aspect left, whether agriculture, whether road, whether justice, whether security, or anything. So I want to be clear on record that this is what we meant. And therefore, if you do this, then you secure the ballot.
Okay.
That is clear.
Can I make up a question to him? Yeah. In your manifesto, did you tell Ugandans that you will cross civil society?
No. But these are aspects of the law.
Okay, this question has been answered.
You're eating into Honourable Gerald's time.
You know why we can't do that, Sarah? Why we can't do that? Because the management of the civil society is already having a law in place. So you don't talk what is already there. The manifesto sets out expected goals, but civil society is clearly managed by NGO Act. So once the law is there, why tell the people? Unless you're telling people we are going to amend the law. Because at the policy level, we talk broad policy matters.
Which is a possibility. Honourable, I want to bring you in.
You know, there's what I will call a fallacy of legitimization. So there is a consistent approach of trying and endeavoring in all sorts of ways to legitimize, sanitize, cut and trace the very ugly actions of the state that have consistently undermined the constitutional order of this country. And now when I see our senior brother, Mr. Awich, trying to even explain away what the president said in their broad light. By the way, he said he doesn't drink. No. So, yeah, so we want to assume that there was no other influence.
He's permanently sober.
Yeah, so, and I'm sure he would really have his words. He probably repeat them the way he would say them. So to see, you know, the effort, the energy to try as much as you can to say that he meant otherwise. And you see, if it was said in isolation, maybe you would say that maybe what Mr. Awich, yeah, maybe he's saying it could have been an accident of the tongue, as they call it, the slip of the tongue. But you see, I mean, we all put dots together, and then we get out a picture. So it can't be one incident after another, and then another, and then another, and then you say, oh, no. Actually, here, he meant this. So, So when he by the way, you know, we have the Public Order Management Act, yeah? So that law was established when we were in Parliament. And I remember one afternoon standing up and telling the Prime Minister then, who was a clear propagator of the law, was very, very, very interested in the law. And I told Honourable Mama Babazi, I said, look, I hope this particular law, and I really hope, I really have never wished to be a prophet of doom, but I hope you don't become the first victim of this very law. Because what I had heard about the presidential ambitions. So, and I said the fellow was curtailing anyone's meeting, saying that if actually, by the way, according to that law, even here, we would probably need to seek permission elsewhere. So, And guess what? A few months later, he was probably the first Ugandan to be flagged that law. Say, sir, you need permission, according to this law, to proceed where you are supposed to go with your meetings. Now I'm not wishing that.
Ginger Mbali.
I think it was Mbali, yeah. And now I'm not wishing our senior brother Awich to be one of those who are first probably detained, as we saw in what we are calling the Preventive Detention Act, which is a which was really a terrible law that now we see the state in a rather subtle way, because the state has two ways of acting. There is the subtle, what seems to be largely covert and a bit softened, the soft approach. So you come quietly and say, no. The issue is bail. These people, these criminals must be detained. Today, as we speak, in Tanzania, just our neighbors here, the leader of opposition is in jail. And guess what the Tanzanian constitution says? For a number of offenses, and quite many, they are unavailable. So meaning he's going to remain in jail until the court hears the case and determines the case depending on whatever evidence that will have been adduced. So we understand where this is headed to. We know where this is going. So, and it is sad to imagine that Ugandans don't watch, they don't follow these things, and that we even don't know where we've come from. So, but what we must be very cautious of is that I think the Almighty blessed some of us with the opportunity to education, with the opportunity to exposure, and even extensive learning. So it is sad that the supermajority of the population that is exceedingly unknowledgeable to the depths of some of these issues, that rely on some of us who have had this opportunity to go to school, to be exposed. We literally use the very tools that they sacrifice, because remember, every old lady who buys a piece of soap, she too pays tax. And that tax paid the teacher, I'm sure, at Ntali School, when Mr. Awich was studying. So, now, for her to say, I think I need to listen to our son. And then, so much effort, so much energy, we put it on, we really, we gather a lot to ensure that we paint a picture. You know, earlier in the break we were chatting about Comical Ari. You know, Comical Ari, incidentally in Makere we used to have a term called chemical. In the politics of students, I'm sure it's probably still around. But Comical Ari, you know, he had a very interesting experience. I think those who followed the war in Iraq, I remember him saying, let those fellows step on our land, and they actually stepped on the land. He said, let them make a mistake and come closer to Baghdad, and they actually got closer. He said, let them actually get inside Baghdad. And they actually entered Baghdad. He said, now let them dare reach where the state apparatus operates from. And they entered and actually picked him. So sometimes when I listen and I say, I think the Almighty needs to be so kind that we don't have to get there. But some of these issues, the constitutional order is the basic parameter that can serve and put in place a framework that can help us emerge from our past. So we've witnessed a very, very turbulent history, like we said earlier. So we've always thought that at least for once, we cannot appreciate that, you know, we have a problem. Irrespective, by the way, of our political affiliations. We appreciate and say, you know, no, we can't allow, because we know in the past we've abused the Constitution, we know where we've ended. So now we say, can we at least convince each other that on the maintenance, on the respecting, on the embracing the Constitution and the constitutional order? Can we be on one page and say, look, at least if nothing makes sense, let our history inform our decisions? But we still have a struggle to make. Like it is said that we are in the struggle. Mr. Awich, please. This struggle is not just, you said, the eating all the time. Yeah. But it should be a struggle about the people. The very people. And for me, what really disturbs me is that we all emanate from some villages, somehow. Even the ones who have grown up in Kororo, somehow we find they have a link to some village. So we experience the kind of life our people are living. We see it with our eyes. And then we also appreciate the influence of having a constitutional order, of having a free and fair election, of an election where people would have confidence, not just in the process, but even in the results. We know how much that has an impact on the progress of the people. But then we come and all we do is just defend the traditional, the Banyankole used to say that even if it's your brother, even if he's gone, you still have to treat him as a brother. But they also reach a point and say, but this brother now needs to be punished. Eh? Yeah, he's a brother. I was trying to find the direct translation of it. But so at this point, I think let's all appreciate that, and especially as a lawyer, that the Constitution that we all long to have is long gone. And that unless we really become honest to ourselves and say, let's restore constitutionalism, this will guide us to depart from the past. Then we shall keep in this, we shall keep oscillating in the same chaos that we've been in for decades now, close to 6 decades now.
Thank you very much, Honourable. And I think at this level, we've tried to give the general overview of how far we've come into the constitutional journey. And I would want us to just dig deep into the specifics of constitutionalism in Uganda today. And possibly, Sarah, I would want to bring you on and try to ask, the Constitution should provide institutional mechanisms for strengthening unity, taking into account cultural, religious, regional, gender, class, and age, including physical diversities of Uganda's people. 59 years later, how have we scored?
Constitutionalism presupposes 3 things. One is a belief in the Constitution, and indeed we call it the grand norm or the supreme law of the land. The second element is that the political and civic organizations work to promote and defend the Constitution. And the third element, and the civic and political organizations and actors, and use it for day-to-day relevance as a guide for their work. The third element is the people. And indeed, Article 3, rests the role of defending the Constitution and citizens of Uganda. So, Honourable Karuhanga was laboring to say at the time, and at an unfortunate time of campaigns, one of the godfathers of our 1995 Constitution. The 1995 Constitution had 3 godfathers. One was and is the President of Uganda, who initiated the process of review of the Constitution through the Ideologue Commission, together with stakeholders. And of course, he was still president during CA, and he did officiate the promulgation of the Constitution on 8th October 1995 and handed it to the people. The last paragraph of and I wish Ugandans could just read the preamble of the Constitution. It has 5 paragraphs, very important paragraphs. But the last paragraph is to say that we hereby, and I'm going to read it. I will read paragraph 3 and 5 of the preamble for the benefit of the citizens. I know we have limited access to understanding the Constitution, which later leads to the consistent manipulation by the political actors. Paragraph 3, committed to building a better future by establishing a socio-economic and political order through a popular and durable national constitution based on the principles of unity, peace, equality, democracy, freedom, social justice, and progress. The last paragraph, do hereby and through this Constituent Assembly solemnly adopt and enact and give ourselves and our posterity this Constitution of the Republic of Uganda this 22nd day of September in the year 1995. So my point of emphasis is give to ourselves and our posterity.
And maybe you can do us a favor by reading us the first paragraph.
We, the people of Uganda,
Yes.
recalling our history,
Yeah.
which has been characterized by political and constitutional instability. Recognizing our struggles against the forces of tyranny, oppression, and exploitation. Maybe we read all of it. It is the most important part of our Constitution. It's the most important. And I wish every citizen can write the preamble of this Constitution in their hearts. That would help us achieve.
Or possibly that would help us say that it's no longer a piece of paper, but it's now at the heart.
Yes, and I was coming to Honourable Karuhanga as a rejoinder to referring to elections as a mere ballot piece. Prior to that, the Constitution the President had referred to the Constitution as a mere piece of paper. And then a Ugandan can Google and say President Museveni calls the Constitution a mere piece of paper. It is still, the internet
and
does
therefore
not,
literally
does
put it in
not
context
forget.
to what the argument
That
was.
was contempt of the Constitution. Ugandans should have risen in accordance with Article 3, which enjoins them to defend the Constitution and ensure that no authority or no force in Uganda abuses the Constitution. That is Article 3. No authority or no force in Uganda. The President speaks in contempt of the Constitution all the time. And his acts confirm what he says in contempt. As we carry on today, the executive is acting in contempt of the doctrine of separation of powers and the independence of judiciary as enshrined under Article 126 of the Constitution. They want to direct and determine what the judiciary does, or the judiciary should pray to their wishes and not the wishes, values, and aspirations of the people. So to me, I had said in my earlier submission that Idi Amin was honest by decreeing whenever he wanted to make a decision. The NRM is decreeing by the stroke of a pen, but we still have decrees under NRM rule by the manner in which they treat the Constitution. This was never envisaged by the people that gave their views to the Odoch Commission. It was never envisaged by the Great Assembly that sat in the Constituent Assembly and enacted this Constitution. Although it had contentious issues, the 3 key contentious issues with this Constitution in 1995 were the issue of political parties, the question on land, and the question on federal. And the Constituent Assembly never resolved those 3. But the other issues, Ugandans were largely in agreement. People being the source of power, doctrine of separation of powers, the basic doctrine structure that has now been confirmed by Supreme Court, which includes the structure for political transition. At least that debate was resolved on whether this constitution has what is known as the basic doctrine. Issues, components of the constitution that when tampered with, then the constitution is deemed abrogated.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And of course, I found out which right there where Sarah has stopped and pointed out issues that possibly you'd want to react on. The NRM government has probably been around longest from the independence. So we're trying to ask ourselves, how much has
Maybe,
it...
Demian, which I forgot
Yes.
to conclude, the Ugandans need to know the godfathers of the 1995 constitution. President Museveni, Justice Odochi, now retired, and the late James Wapakabura. So one of the godfathers is deceased. The late Wapakabura delivered the constitution through chairing the Constituent Assembly. And it is still on record that he's still the best speaker Uganda has ever had to date, followed by Butajira, Ambassador Butajira, and then the rest to rank below there. Because of ability to compromise, ability to balance interests, and taking a firm stand in a neutral manner. Elements that are now cracks in the manner in which the second arm of government is being steered.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Fande, I want to bring you on and try to give us your perspective on how far you've gone as NRM to strengthen.
Yes, there's how far we have gone as NRM, but I also wanted to stick on Uganda with or without NRM. What is it on constitutionalism? But let me first remark what Honourable Karuhanga said. Honourable Karuhanga spent about 3/4 of his presentation on how much I put in defending NRM.
Sanitizing.
Well, it looks like I do it so well, Honourable Karanga, because you really spent a lot of your effort on it.
It seems the COVID sanitization season has
you spent a lot on it, and I think it may work in my favor. If you really, I mean, by my party chairman and my party supporters, because it seems Karanga, it seems Honourable Karanga seems to think I put in a lot of effort. Thank you so much. But all I am saying is, I am a lawyer by profession, and law works by evidence and issues at hand. Also, my background in the army is that I was political commissar, and a political commissar, as opposed to intelligence, are more open people. We are actually, the only uniqueness, for your information, as UPC, is that the uniqueness this army had right from the beginning is the embedded political commissar inside. If you got a group of political commissars meeting, you'd think it was a group of rebels. They were the internal checks and balances in the system, and they did a lot to improve the quality of the army. So I come from that background. So, Honourable Karanga, if I really try to defend, I'm really, first of all, I'm responding to specifics. As I said, I had thought we were going to have a running thematic concerns, but time and again it comes to specific, like what you're saying. And if I don't respond, you're a lawyer, it would amount to conceding. So if my response to specific issues is beautiful, then I'm honored for it. But I base on facts, I base on reality, and with my conscience as a political commissar, I'm not a demagogue. So I really try to respond on real issues, and as I have done, and as envisaged in the party. And therefore, this brings me to the issue, whether or not Museveni as a person believes in constitutionalism. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to tell you that in the forum that we sit, if you try to raise anything, the first thing Museveni will ask you is, what is the law saying? And the law in this case means both constitution and the other subsidiary laws. So, if anybody has any fear about Museveni's non-negligent or non-adherence to the law, that is far from the truth. I've been in meetings where we ask close as this, and I continue to be. So that is
There is the
plain
form
truth.
and the substance, my
Yes.
friend.
That is a plain truth. So
Yes,
is that.
and maybe
Now-
to mention, Afanda Wichi, is you can ask what the law says so that you find ways of bypassing what the law says.
Typical
not that.
Yeah.
Not that. So I want to assure listeners
Typical
that
guy.
viewers, I want to assure viewers that Museveni is a strong adherent to the law. And if you want to remove his hands away,
when it suits
even
him.
at party meetings, you cite that the law says this, he will leave it. So that is it. Now, on the specific of the constitutionalism
Can he
now,
leave bail?
on the yes, you see why? Why can't he leave bail? Because right now,
No,
as the executive,
no. Why can't he leave bail? Look, how many Ugandans are in jail who have been granted bail and have been rearrested just as they are leaving prison?
Yeah.
By
The most
the
recent
I
cases,
explained
the
that
by the
already.
forces he commands.
So,
But I was
how
answering
can you say
Sarah.
he
Sarah was
respects the
saying,
law?
can he
let's
leave
leave,
bail? I was saying, he can leave it. Why? Or he has left it. Why? Because as the law applies now, no judge will not grant bail because Museveni has said. The only way Museveni
If he
can
doesn't
come
respect
in
it.
is to say, look, there's a problem, there's a lacuna in the criminal justice system. What do we do? As I earlier on said, the judges use the law. So the only way Museveni can do that is by convincing the country, using the appropriate legislative system, to pass the law about bail. At the moment, for example, NRM caucus disagreed, and that is democracy.
Okay,
So
but
if
That's
they-
subject to the referendum.
A quick question. The president has raised controversy on bail 3 times. The first time was in 2005. At the time, Besigye and about 48 others were detained for a People's Redemption Army, a fictitious rebel group created by his government that never existed. That's the first time we started having this controversial debate on bail. The second time was Arua massacre when Bobo Wine. Karanga, you were arrested in Arua.
Yes.
The Honourable Karanga
I'm
was arrested
actually
in
on
Arua.
bail.
Yes.
So you should know, yes.
So yeah, so when the state alleged that 45 able-bodied men lifted one stone and hit one car,
Yeah.
I don't know why they cannot.
I think I was proceeding.
Yes, I want your answer on that. The third time that the question on bail is also becoming controversial is after the arrest of 2 members of parliament belonging to the opposition, specifically the National Unity Platform. So why, in your view, why do you think that at the time ministers from President Museveni's cabinet were arrested, including Honourable Mukura, Jim Muhwezi, Honourable Kutesa, and others? Why didn't bail become controversial then?
Because then I think bail issue started.
No, let him answer
when the
me.
human rights
How come when NRM
speech,
people are
yes.
arrested, including his ministers, bail is not controversial?
No, it's not that, Sarah.
What
The
is
debate of bail has been continuous. No. Even in the Odoki report, the debate of bail is, you can check and see. It did not start at a time that you're saying. That's
I
not
am talking
correct.
about President Museveni under the
Yes,
1995
so the
Constitution.
debate on bail has been a continuous debate since the Odoki Commission. In fact, the Odoki Commission had rejected it, and that was the position of Museveni. But people ruled
And
it,
the
and it went.
Constituent Assembly
So it is
resolved
not
it.
correct to say that Museveni has started the debate on bail now. No. This debate started from the Odoki Commission. It is on record. So I rest it there.
No, my question is
Sarah, let's allow him
yeah, he will
complete.
proceed.
Yes.
The question is not answered. My question is, since the enactment of the Constitution, that means that Constituent Assembly resolved the issue, the debate on bail. Since the Constituent Assembly took a decision on bail, President Museveni has raised bail 3 times, the question on bail, and I've mentioned the times and the years. And my question is, how come when NRM senior leaders are arrested, bail is not controversial?
And maybe you can, do you want to answer
that.
it with this
No.
one? You want
You
to
have
Okay,
to
let's
if
have
you
these
can
questions.
respond with
yes.
this, Mr. Wich, it's good you've mentioned how you're a lawyer. are you certain that you want to establish a constitutional order where we have a presumption of guilt? And so then it's the individual to prove themselves innocent. Are you certain that that's what you want to replace it with what we have now? Then, but do you realize also that by what you are agitating for, you are creating a benchmark, you are creating the foundation of what the regime would actually love to achieve?
Now, Mr. Modo, I think
Yes.
we may have to have a separate debate on bail because it's really thinking constitutionalism. Now, my answer to Sarah is the Constituent Assembly pronounced itself. And my answer to that was that the dynamicity of the law. And I said that even when the Constituent Assembly pronounced itself by consensus, it was not by unanimity. It pronounced itself by consensus, not by unanimity. The
In
aspects,
a democracy, majority carry the day. So there is nothing
it did not
uniqueness
therefore
about that.
It
There is
did
no
not.
uniqueness.
It did not iron out the other aspects of the people who were shut down by consensus. Okay, given that the benefit of the doubt was given, you put the law in place. With the constitution or what? Once you pass the law and you put it in operation, you start seeing the cracks. And that is why a law is not static, it is amendable.
Exactly.
So that consensus which passed that provision in the CA,
Yes.
those who lost the debate said, okay, let it go. It let it go. Over time, the cracks ensued. That is why the debate is
Why
now
are
on.
the cracks visible when it is opposition?
I want to bring in
No, but-
Joseph, because we've spent so
I have
much.
had
and then-
interruptions from Sarah.
Yes, let Joseph come in, then I'll get back to you. Joseph, yes.
Yes, and NRM actually interrupted the
We're talking about the stability.
Indeed,
and-
indeed. And NRM interrupted the democratic process in this country. In 1980, after a very clear multi-party democratic elections, which UPC won convincingly, DP came second, DP won in Museveni's constituency, UPC came second, Museveni came third, totally rejected by the people of Barra North. They opted to break the constitutional process, taking us back to worse than Aminism by going to Luweero. That's for the record, one. Number two, going forward, my brother, which refers to his role as a political commissar, for my information, I'm a young activist, or at least up to that time. So I've really never been in the army. I've never been in government. I was just a young UPC enthusiast, turned now a political leader. But I actually happen to know that the army that UPC led was the Uganda National Liberation Army, which Museveni was a top official of. So how they formulated this, whether or not they put the political misery, is neither here nor there, for information. So that's the army Obote inherited with the mandate of the people in 1980 December. But I also happen to know that I think a sharp lawyer, Kagata Namiti, lieutenant, was actually a political commissar. I'm not quite sure whether that was in the course of the Bote II government or leading to the liberation of Uganda. So which you might, we might have to review these ones. But I actually... Directly, but so whatever the case. But it's exciting that NRA has got to create a political misery, which refers to and talks about it as something that helped moderate the army. Up to 1995, that was 20 years since NRA and the DP guys came to power, most of northern Uganda was in shambles, in concentration camps, with huge abuse of human rights by the NRA, and which is from Lango, which when I returned 10 years later, in 2005, I went to Lira, and surrounding the cathedral were children from concentration camps. So I don't know what the political misery of NRA was doing to try and calm down NRA from the extremes, which is actually recorded as part of the 35 years of this country. In fact, most of northern Eastern Uganda was really rampaged by NRA. But I thought I would just say that for the record, and within the context of UPC and the conversation that we're having here, and in response to what my brother Awich said. And I say so with absolute humility, because I believe completely that we need to take lessons from this and move forward as a country. Putting in context, Sarah also referred to the gold scandals in 1960s. Actually, as a matter of interest, just a matter of information, those gold scandals actually were creations by CIA. UPC was fighting to defend the Lumumbist forces in Congo, and the CIA guys couldn't believe that a Uganda government, in fact, all of us were committed to the liberation of Africa, and in this case, supporting the Lumumbist forces. What I'm trying to say is, one of the missing links in the conversations in Uganda is contextualizing our history, once in a while giving credit where it's due, but once in a while where there is a gap, all of us coming together and trying to learn and share and put the pieces.
Joseph, right there, our time is fast spent.
Yeah.
So I want you, while you're finalizing, concluding, you need to give us your way forward for the stability of Uganda.
Interestingly, I was actually coming to that, although you remember in the segment you jumped me off a bit, you know. Is this that going forward as a country, we need to pick what happened in Obote's government, first Obote government, fantastic government, and why, for instance, the ministers, so-called ministers, were detained. Those guys were detained with evidence that they
so-called, or they were really ministers?
The ministers, and you're right, thank you, and they were detained because actually they were plotting to overthrow the democratically elected government of Uganda, the first democratically elected government of Uganda. Was the detention the right thing? Was the detention the right? You know what I'm saying? So contextualizing every step of what every government did. Then Amin, then Obote II, then this crude NRA thing after 35 years. I don't know what these guys cannot perfect legally. But I believe generally that this country going forward is possible. And I think Sarah was attempting to beg young Ugandans, and I think to an extent Ellie, rather Gerald, that we need to do a lot more reading, we need to do a lot more sharing, and I think that's why I miss this space whenever I'm not here, that particularly the youth of this country, as a civic space, engage constructively. I think we still lack consensus amongst ourselves. We still have to be able to try and score points to the extent that which has to go out and bring out for us the NRA manifesto of 2001 to make the NRA points. And imagine this after 35 years, they still have to shake and shake and shake to show evidence. But final point. In 1980, when UPC won elections, it was only UPC that provided a manifesto, NRA did not. So manifestos are neither here nor there. Final point, going forward, Demi, the burden of responsibility lies in the hands of Mr. Museveni. He needs to at least say, look, whatever has happened in this country, he has the lead responsibility to help harmonize this country, work with all people of different political shades to try and secure a consensus so that there's a constitutional consensus, including listening to the voices of the people of Uganda on this matter called bail and saying that, look, what is it that we Ugandans cannot resolve by means of common sense rather than using a document that we claimed we authored from the mountains to try and make sure that it becomes the guiding principles of the country. I think really, generally, this country is possible. What is lacking is information, and the NRA guys know that the more information is put on the table, the much more exposed they are, including the atrocious past, the incompetence to date, and the possibilities that the future of this country cannot be secured by NRA because they completely failed to create a possible Uganda going forward.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Honourable Gerald, your way forward for the stability of Uganda in about 3 minutes.
Countries that have progressed, and we know this throughout the world, they have come together at some point, appreciated their challenges, and decided to pursue some basic understanding. They will have different political parties, they will disagree on so many things, but there are those basic principles that most of these countries have eventually reduced into a written constitution. Some still have unwritten conventions. Now, in our case, as a largely humble African country that is still emerging in many ways, we need a constitutional order problem more than anybody else. I'm not very certain whether there are more than 3 countries in the world that are democratic or semi-democratic that have not seen a peaceful transition of power like we have seen. That are still, if there are many, probably there may be 2 or 3. And unfortunately, we're one of those 2 or 3 countries. So,
But we have seen.
And
Which one?
You
yeah,
have not seen?
Which one?
So now, okay, I will come to that. I'm glad that Mr. Awich is trying now to reach out to UPC for an example.
because they know UPC is the future, and UPC will calm down their tragic records.
I'm surprised that UPC is not coming up.
It's really interesting. So
they know UPC is the center of stability.
Yeah,
so
yes, yeah.
I really strongly believe that the framers of our constitution, for them, among all things, to say that this must appear in the first paragraph of our constitution, that knowing our, largely the summary of it would be probably knowing our tyrannical history, the history of tyranny, that they appreciate that finally we need to depart from that history. So, my appeal, finally, to Ugandans, and especially those who are supporting the ruling regime, is that it is in the interest of our country to have an embracing, respected, and actually firmly entrenched constitutional order. That the undermining of the constitution largely benefits an individual. And by the way, it's even not to the full extent, that it will even benefit the cronies. Because sometimes, as we've seen, when the constitutional order now becomes completely shattered, then sometimes even the cronies suffer. So it is, we've seen so much as a country. We've seen so much pain, so much bloodshed, so many people losing limbs, so many wars and turmoil. Let's depart, let's use the Constitution. Luckily, we are able to appreciate the essence of the Constitution. So it's my prayer and appeal that we restore the constitutional order that can see greater governance for the greater progress of our country.
Thank you very much, Honourable. Sarah, your parting shots in 3.
Well, every country needs consensus to develop. Uganda had attained minimum consensus with a few deviations at the time of enactment of the 1995 Constitution. But does that consensus still hold? My individual answer is no, as a citizen. My answer as a constitutional actor in a watchdog organization of the Constitution is no. And my observation is that we do not have rule of law, but rule by law. A constitution is neither self-enacting and nor is it self-executing. But once enacted through consensus, it should be respected by all actors. This is the element that is consistently lacking in our lifetime as a country, post-independence lifetime, It's very unfortunate that for 6 decades in the post-independence Uganda, no leader has handed over instruments of power to another leader. Very unfortunate in post-independence Uganda.
Sure.
Who has handed over power?
I will.
No, if you can quickly mention.
Not no.
Post-independence Uganda?
No, maybe
don't
one
want-
say
I
Museveni
You
to
want-
Museveni.
I don't want to
Museveni to
interrupt. I don't want to
Museveni.
interrupt.
Yes, we only received instruments of power from the colonial administration. That is the only handover this country has seen.
Museveni to Yoweri Kaguta.
He hands over to himself.
No, Mwanga to Obote, actually, in 1980.
The commission, the Paul Mwanga Commission.
Yes.
Yes,
In a way,
but
actually,
that was not
I've been-
an elected government.
Well, in-
Paul Mwanga Commission was not elected.
Actually, sir, I'm not interrupting you, but actually something, food for thought,
Eh.
going forward as a conversation, particularly for you guys,
Yes,
constitutional lawyers.
yes.
Mafabi likes suggesting that, you can, Museveni and Amin can easily justify themselves, as leaders, not being squatters in State House. So it's actually possible that since we accept that Lule had been elected by that organ and that Binaisa was elected by that organ, just food for thought, and that the Binaisas, I mean, that the Mwanga, Museveni
So who
group
elected
and came-
Mwanga?
They came as a military commission.
But there was no constitutional order.
Yes, you see, if there was,
that interim
who
constitutional
was the elected by Mosh consensus? It was Rude,
Lule,
followed by Benaisa. So if there was peaceful handover of power, it should have been Benaisa
No,
to Obote.
no, interestingly,
Because Paul Mwanga no elected him.
No, just as a matter of interest. The interim parliament, mandated the electoral commission, I mean, the military commission to take over. So in a way, parliament gave them the powers, and Museveni was the number 2 in that, number 1. Number 2, for information for viewers, apparently when Obote went to State House, he actually released, found Binaisa, who had been detained in State House. So apparently Obote, and we did more Binaisa from State. As a matter of interest, actually, that's the information I got quite
Okay,
more
so
later.
did Paul Mwanga take presidential oath
Yes, as I understand it.
and received instruments?
As I understand
From
it, yes.
You people are not
That's
informed
an
about
interesting one.
national
There's a
No,
gap.
no, wait, wait.
No, that's actually a
see,
gap. That's a gap.
there is a gap.
No, there's a gap, and it's why that's actually trying to
No,
discover.
wait.
I
For
think
contextual historical
We are
record.
prolonging this.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
So I think to really largely kind of enclose that debate, we all appreciate that was largely a very unconstitutional,
Of course,
unstable,
arrangement.
yes, unstable. So
Yes.
when we say that there has never been a peaceful transition, everyone knows that there was no
What's the
stability in that
meaning of
period.
a peaceful?
Yeah,
It's
so-
like saying that Basilio Okero handed over
So
to
it's
Tito
in the
Okero.
greater-
No,
it's
no,
in
no,
the-
no,
it's in
no,
the
no,
greater
no,
sense.
I'm coming,
But
but you
yeah.
see,
Yeah, it's in a
also
greater
these are
sense.
leaders of our constitution during this turbulence. So to me, really, I cannot count that.
No, fair enough.
Yes.
It just came to my mind.
Yes,
That's what it
yeah,
concerned.
maybe that's what he's referring to. Paul Mwanga as chair of the commission, holding elections, usurping powers of people who were announcing, saying nobody should announce again. Really, was that is also something to write home about? Yeah. So even if
35
he had
years,
instruments of power,
35
that's
years or
really
59.
part of tyranny that this country is still suffering from. So my call to the young people is, let nobody deceive you that they are a savior. They have sacrificed. You know the words.
Oh, that word, sacrifice.
Yeah, words that are so precious, especially us who are a bit religious. Sacrifice, savior. We attach them normally to religion. So when individuals try to usurp these words in contempt of what they originally mean, Ugandans should wake up
Servitude,
and know that the posterity of this country is hijacked by a few people. The constitution is held in contempt at all times. It is not the source of power, and we need to work to restore constitutionalism in this country.
Thank you, Sarah. And finally,
Oh,
Pandey.
thank you. Just a correction on whether or not Uganda has ever had a peaceful transfer of power. I'm saying yes. Now, in constitutional law, a government that has come in place, and I said before, is a government by law. If you want to know try to overthrow it, you'll be charged of treason. If Flight Lieutenant Rawlings came by coup,
theory.
wait. Now, if Flight Lieutenant Rawlings in Ghana came by military coup, an election is held and he hands over, isn't that peaceful transfer? Does it matter how the previous came or it is the peacefulness?
Just to make your case.
Rawlings came by a gun, by coup. Election is held, he transfers.
He was also elected.
There's a time when Rawlings came by coup. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, if we are to talk to Ugandans, let's talk facts and be sure. After Min, the parliament was called the National Consultative Council, with the speaker as Professor Ogumayo. The idea was, whoever was there was temporary pending election as envisaged in Moshi.
Indeed.
Now, Lule showed all signs of entrenchment. Lule becomes the first person to have ever been overthrown by parliament, not by a gun, what you call impeachment. After Lule, Binaisa was put. When Binaisa was put, Binaisa
was he put?
By parliament. Or when Binaisa was put, it was even worse. How? Binaisa was saying by word of mouth that Entebbe a woman. Clearly, it was not. Now, this time, unlike Lule was overthrown by parliament, Binaisa was overthrown by the military.
Commission.
Under the military commission then was chaired by Paul Mwanga, deputized by Museveni. Now,
Isn't that
a constitutional amendment came where a head of state, a presidency, came under a shared presidency because parliament and Ugandans then said, if we put Lule, he wants to entrench himself. We put Binaisa, he wants to entrench himself. We put Ukelo, we put Biamugisha. So what do? Ugandans said, let us create 3 persons in one. Now, where do you get the 3? They went to court and got Justice Musoke, Justice Nyamuchoncho. They were in court of appeal. They put Wachalwol. They were sworn as head of state. And if you want to know a head of state, a president, a law does not become a law until it is assented to by the president. These were the people assenting to the law, not Paul Mwanga. They were shared head of state. In 1980 independence, like we celebrated recently, these 3 people went and read a speech of the president, 3 combined to the people of Uganda. It was like God, the Holy Spirit, the Son, and the Father. 3 people were presidents. Now, if you don't want to accept Obote came by peaceful means, did Obote come by coup? But it did not come by coup. It was the shared presidency of Nyamuchoncho, Musoke, and Wacholwol under the amended constitution, which handed over power to Obote. If you didn't want to mention that, you are actually conceding Obote came by coup, which was not the case. So a government was in place. The president were shared presidency. 3, Justice Nyamuchoncho, Justice Musoke, and Wacholwol. They were the shared president, 3 in 1.
You see,
and they handed over.
Fantastic information.
You see, yes. I'm emphasizing this because as leaders, as you said, we are paid by the taxpayers and the ordinary people are listening to us. Now, if we are not informed, that is a disservice to them. Let's get the history and the facts of the country on our fingertips.
You see what you are
doing.
What you are sharing is that was not a stable time.
No. I'm saying there was a peaceful transfer.
Do they appear on the current of presidents of Uganda?
Now, if it doesn't appear on somebody's ignorance, what do you have to say?
But you are in charge.
Anyway, now I just put that straight, that for viewers to know that there has ever been a transfer of power. Now, coming back to the specifics as I conclude, is that I've answered whether or not. Yes. I am sure you are convinced, whether or not. Now, the viewers, on the specific of a decree, I don't want it to go unmentioned. Sarah says that Amin was better because he mentions a decree, did by decree.
No, I said he was honest.
We believe, as NRM, believes that...
I said he was honest. I did not say he was better.
Okay. Now, we believe that there are 2 things in the Constitution. There is the question of land and the question of power. Listen to the diction and the framing. Power belongs to the people. Land belongs to the citizens. That is the drafting. Power belongs to who? To the people. Land belongs to who? to the citizens. Meaning, therefore, foreigners don't own land, but meaning power means even in your LC, whether you're Muzungu or what, you have a say in what you're saying. So, because of this principle of power belonging to the people, NRM has never wanted to use decree. And that's why even the president consults the movement caucus. And you have seen they have rejected.
Who qualifies to be a voter? I think
okay?
this is
so that is it. So that is why.
Who qualifies to be a voter?
That is why. That is why. We
do foreigners qualify to vote?
No, that is why we don't prefer a decree to a consultation. Now, I want to be specific on the current status. Are we being constitutional? I want to show that one ingredient of constitutionalism is the existence of the Constitutional Court. Because the Constitutional Court is there to interpret every action. Is it constitutional? Is it not? And we have made many pronouncements. I'm sure Karuhanga must have been a beneficiary in one of the constitutional petitions. So, if you feel something is not being constitutional, the Constitutional Court is there. For example, the Constitutional Court ruled in the case of women who went to court to say this use of the word, for example, in divorce, where you give, which was discriminatory on women, okay? Is it constitutional? Is it not? And these were provisions of the law. So the Constitutional Court has always made pronouncement to say, no, this is not constitutional. No, this is constitutional. And that is a very embedded aspect of constitutionalism. In that, we have a specific court to hear and judge whether or not an action is constitutional or not. So I am therefore saying, finally saying that rather than saying we shall regain, we should fight and regain our constitutionalism, I am calling on Ugandans that let us preserve and maintain the constitutionalism that we have. We could have challenges. And I'm calling upon everybody to be as honest, whether you're in NRM or whether you're in NUP or whether you are where, we should all maintain our constitutionalism that we have so far maintained up to now. It could have challenges, but we're on the right course.
Yeah, just a quick one, Demian, on the powers of the Constitutional Court. I hope Afanda Awich is aware of the Mwanga Chivumbi case, which outruled the powers of police to grant or deny public gatherings. The government did not appeal. What they did was to go to Parliament and reenact the section under Section 8 of Public Order Management Act in violation of Article 92 of the Constitution, which prohibits Parliament from reenacting or enacting a law to undermine a decision of court. The Constitutional Court has ruled again that indeed Section 8 of Public Order Management Act is unconstitutional. The government has gone to Supreme Court. Is the Constitutional Court of any essence? Is it an aspect to base on to rule that there is constitutionalism in this country, given that example of contempt of a Constitutional Court by your government?
Thank you very much. I think if we continue like this, we might have to have this conversation go on and on and on. But that's how it is at Civic Space TV here and with the Citizens Chat Show. Conversations heat up and you feel we need to be part of it till the end. But of course, we need to end here. Thank you, our viewers, for being part of this conversation. And of course, my dear panelists for accepting the invitation and honoring the invitation and being part of us here today. These conversations are always on every Friday. We are here 2 to 4 p.m. And also, we've dedicated this, probably this whole month, onto our 59 years of the Constitution. We've tackled, last week we were discussing the 59 years as they were and the 26 years of the Constitution. We'll need to now go into, possibly today we've discussed the constitutionalism, picking into the 59 years of our independence, and possibly next week we'll have to tackle the economic bit and possibly end with the social engagements. I hope maybe then my panelists will also allow the invitations and accept to be part of these conversations until the end, because this space here is meant to inform the citizens and also give them information, reawaken their spirit and be part of this the country and the governance of the country. My name has remained Masesa Demiano. May God bless Uganda.